From the Watergate Building in Washington, this is Hotline TV. Now, here are Hotline editors Chuck Todd and John Mercurio.
Hey, we've got who's in and who's out, and just when they're going to do it. Hello, everybody. I'm Chuck Todd, back from my knitting cruise.
And I'm John Mercurio. Welcome back from that knitting cruise, and welcome
I
to
knitted
Hotline
me a jacket.
TV.
See?
First, the ins and outs. This week, Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack announced he'll make a long-shot bid for president, long shot being his words, while Senate Majority Leader Frist said no to his own against-the-odds campaign. Chuck, how do each of these announcements change their respective fields?
Well, most importantly, I like the Phil Collins reference. Always big, against all odds. Yeah, against all odds.
Good song.
A good movie, filmed in Cozumel,
Indeed.
in case you're wondering. Look,
I am always wondering.
Let's start with the Vilsack thing. You know, he needed to do what he had to do. He had to be the first one out.
Right.
Howard Dean, you know, for what it was worth, in 2002 was the first one out of the gate
Sure,
for
not
the
that
2004
anybody ever heard
campaign.
about it, but sure.
Right, and he ended up having 2 and 3 and 4 different announcements. You know, he kept doing what Vilsack did was the big one. It's hard not to assume this guy's not running for vice president. I don't buy this idea that he somehow is a stalking horse for Hillary. You know, I love that conspiracy theory that this idea, oh, Vilsack's just running to make Iowa less important. Well, he's already in 4th. I mean, you know, he himself. The problem Vilsack has is this Iowa thing, right? Even if he somehow comes back and wins Iowa, it's home state. You know, it'll always be written off. John Lapp, his
But
former
none of the
chief
other,
of staff.
as opposed to 1992, when everybody sort of ignored Iowa because of Harkin, nobody's going to ignore Iowa.
Completely ignored it. But you know, a lot of those guys, Steve Jarding, who was a part of Bob Kerry's campaign back then, will tell you biggest mistake they made was conceding Iowa. They actually believed Bob Kerry, a Nebraska guy, right next door.
Well, and the biggest mistake that Lieberman and that Wesley Clark did
you
in 2004
don't skip
was to
the first
concede
event.
Iowa. Right.
You just don't do it. It's the first event. You don't skip it.
It might actually end up being sort of the curse of the Iowa politicians, because they're always going to face competition. They're always going to face high expectations in their home state, so they can never get the jump they think they need.
I think Tom Vilsack is maybe singularly the most intelligent person in the field, and I mean, literally.
Does that really matter? I mean,
well, what it does
honestly,
is,
does that actually
to be a running mate? It does. I mean,
to be a running mate,
and that's my point. I mean, if this is I mean, the right candidates aren't in this thing. I mean, if Joe Biden and Chris Dodd were the front runners, you'd sit there and say, wow, Tom Vilsack's a great running mate. You know, maybe Hillary Clinton, maybe Vilsack's a good running mate. Doesn't make sense, obviously, for an Obama. Doesn't make sense for a John Edwards. Maybe somehow if Wesley Clark was a top-tier candidate, you could see how it makes sense. But it isn't quite all there. However, he will be the ideas guy. Somebody had to be, and I think it'll be Vilsack. I mean, he is a bright man.
He's going to be the experiment, though, I think, for Democrats to find out, and not just for Democrats, but for Republicans too. Ultimately, if he ends up going beyond the primary, to find out how much change people really want. We talked about this yesterday. In a 1,200-word speech,
what's he going to do? Is he committing for change?
Courage
to commit change.
Courage to commit change. 12
I think you're committing a robbery.
12 times.
The courage to commit a robbery. That's committing change, right?
How much do Americans really want change? How much do Americans really want the first open-seat presidential campaign since 9/11? How much do they really want to sort of switch horses from somebody who's got absolutely no federal government experience?
It's funny. Vilsack is, in an odd way, he may be the reincarnation of Jimmy Carter in this sense, the 75 version of him. But there's no corruption to clean up. You know, if you felt like you needed an outsider values guy, because the one thing, Vilsack is this values guy too, right? The orphan, picked up on the Bill strap. Christy Vilsack is an outstanding spouse surrogate type of person. Look, she'll be in. You want my prediction? She'll get elected to Congress before he's ever president. I mean, I think that after this experiment is done, you know, after he becomes the Secretary of Agriculture, you know, Christy Vilsack comes to Congress.
We'll see.
Bill Frist, quickly, 2 seconds.
Bill Frist.
Bill Frist. He used to be a senator.
Yesterday's news. No, I think he proved. I mean, we saw what happened to Bill Frist. 2002, top of his game, brought him in as the Senate Majority Leader. He, at that point, was the outsider. He came in, and ever since he became that Republican ideological insider, you've seen his star fall until this week when he announced he couldn't run. He couldn't run as this outgoing Senate Majority Leader.
I commend him for self-awareness. This week's American Democracy Conference in Washington, hosted by our friends at the University of Virginia and, well, us at the Hotline, showcased top consultants for the 2008 White House candidates talking strategy. John, you did a panel on the Democratic contenders. What did you learn?
I learned that the Democrats are preparing for a 2008 race that has very little to do with Iraq. They are anticipating, like I think a lot of people are at this point, that Iraq is not going to be the issue that in 2008 that it is in 2006, and that national security actually won't be an issue. Across the board, First question I threw out to the entire panel, large panel, 6 great experts, was sort of like, what is the debate going to be in 2008? Almost every one of them said it was going to be about the economy and about economic security and about people focused on issues like pensions and how the healthcare problems affect their
Is that driven by the map? Is that driven by the electoral map? And it's funny,
to some extent, I think that's
the
true,
Midwest
right.
and the West, they're going through, particularly the Midwest is going through this economic, and Iowa's the start, is going through this sort of economic
That's
angst.
Exactly right. The Midwest and the Mountain West, I think, is not necessarily the West Coast,
correct,
but the Mountain West and the sort of the Midwest and the industrial, even the industrial Northeast, I think, is sort of, and that's going to be the battleground in the 2008 race, and that's where the Democrats were fighting. The other thing is they honestly still believe. We got Mark Warner dropped out. He was sort of the consummate red state Democrat that could win all 50 states. They still believe, and this was certainly led by Anita Dunn, who was representing Evan Bayh, that they need a red state appeal. They need to be able to go into Indiana and get those, All
right, let me play devil's advocate. The 2 people you didn't really have represented on the panel were Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
Indeed, they declined.
Now,
we asked
the red state. No. But this red state moment, isn't that really sort of the only way you fight Obama? You're the anti-Clinton-Obama faction of the party. Is that what's going on here?
Although, if you believe the Obama spin, the Obama mania, he can go anywhere. He can go to all 50 states, and he can. People just want to touch him.
What was the Obama factor in this panel? What hung over larger on this panel of candidate strategists? Obama or Hillary?
Obama. Definitely.
Because he just sort of, he ruins all their money.
Because he ruins all their money. There's a Hillary fatigue factor. I think people are tired of being asked about Hillary because there's only so much.
And she's sort of a given. We already sort of understand what that world looks like,
we
right?
do, although I think increasingly there's questions about how she does run if Obama runs, if somebody like Al Gore runs. Where Hillary Clinton factors.
I want to talk about the Al Gore boomlet, but that's for another show. It seems like there's something happening there.
Yeah. All right, Chuck. Todd moderated the panel of Republican hopefuls, top strategists, including representatives from the Romney, Brownback, Gingrich, and McCain campaigns. Nice lineup. Chuck, what were your insights?
Well, it's interesting. None of them really want to believe. The only candidate that wanted to believe there was a front runner was obviously John McCain. I thought that was interesting, but how all of them took pains to say there was no front runner, that there was a top tier, but that there was no front runner. I thought that was fascinating. The second thing was sort of how non-factor. The ghost over my panel was Rudy. The ghost over yours was Obama. Mine was Rudy, and if they only knew how hard it was to even get Rudy people wanting to be a part of it, then they were, then they weren't, then they didn't know who to go to. Clearly we learned a lot about Rudy's campaign structure going over the 2 or 3 weeks. But they really don't believe Rudy runs, and they just don't see how it fits in that respect.
That's interesting because when you talk to his campaign people, they honestly say that he's doing it, and even when you get them to sort of go beyond the spin and peel back the lies.
I think my guess is exactly. My guess is that these guys are the ones that do these donor meetings, and so it's the first place you find out if a candidate is running is when you meet with these pioneers and these rangers at Bush campaign. That factor. But the other thing you brought up, the Iraq non-factor, these guys seem to indicate the same thing. But I almost wonder if they were wishing it to be a non-factor. It was almost sort of like they're hopeful it's a non-factor. They're hopeful that that's the case.
I think the Democrats' point, I think the Democrats were trying to be smart about it because when they first all of a sudden started talking about the economy, I started questioning, I started thinking, why aren't we talking about Iraq? And then I realized they're just being smart and not anticipating or not banking on the Iraq is
they can't afford to
It's not going to be the same ace in the hole that it was.
Where meanwhile the Republicans are just sort of praying
right. Exactly.
that Iraq is not the other thing. I thought we did get some had poor Alex Fogel, the guy who was putting together the first presidential campaign. We had him on there literally the day after Frist drops out, and I got to introduce him literally as welcome yesterday's news. He took it in stride. But what was great about him is he set these bars, the financial bars, that none of them disagreed. He said, no Republican candidate, that only the major Republican candidates, if they haven't raised $30 million in the first quarter, they're not serious. And if you can't get $100 million in the first year, you're not serious. And I thought, in some ways, we kind of knew that, but to hear it, hey, draw the line in the sand, here it is, that was fascinating.
And that's interesting. Democrats wouldn't put any dollar amount on it.
Finally, the disagreement, which the best moment of disagreement I had was sort of the importance of Iowa. Everybody else wanted to downplay the importance of Iowa except one person's strategy, Mitt Romney's. Jan van Lohuizen somebody who's usually very reclusive, doesn't talk. He was like, we've never had a Republican primary with a calendar this squashed. You know, the 04 was the first time with it on the Democratic side, and he's like, I don't think everybody here is relying too much on history, and he just beat up history. He kept saying, you know, that was his thing. I think he's right. I mean, Iowa is going to be the decider for the Republicans, not just the winnower this time.
The other thing
the straw poll will be the the winnower.
The other thing I thought that was interesting on your panel was the discussion about immigration reform, and how it's basically off the table.
It is, but it's interesting. You know, don't forget, I had 4 of those 5 people were sort of on the Bush side of immigration, including Brownback.
But why did they want it to be off the table? I mean, if Bush's side of immigration still has a lot of work.
The only person that didn't want it off the table was the Romney guy. So I think we got a hint at sort of how potentially Romney will go after, how the Romney folks are going to go to McCain's right a little bit. It looks like they're going to go to his right on immigration, which may not make the most sense for the business guy to do that. But we'll see. It was good stuff. Timing, they say, John Mercurio, is everything. Tom Vilsack jumped into the White House race now so he could get the free media. Newt Gingrich says he'll wait till September of 2007 to get in, banking on high name ID to get him recognized. Let's take a look at some top contenders and strategize their start dates. Producer Reed, what do you have?
All right, first up, Hillary Clinton, before or after May 1st?
I feel like Hillary Clinton, there's almost no answer for this. It doesn't really matter when Hillary Clinton gets in
She's already in,
race. She's
in our opinion, right?
Until she's out.
Yes.
She's in, and she will continue to be mentioned. She'll continue to be the sort of elephant in the room until she makes some sort of announcement.
That's donkey. We are talking about Democrats.
We are talking about Democrats.
It's donkey in the room.
May 1st, I say she probably should announce before then, because the longer she waits, the more aloof she becomes, and she looks. I mean, you know, yesterday was a very important discussion about the 2008 presidential campaign at our conference.
Well, what's interesting is,
and she wasn't there.
They took a week to decide whether to have a representative. Now, one could argue having Carville there earlier was sort of having
but he was not representing.
But he was not representing, and it was interesting. But they took a week to decide that, which is sort of, you know, I say before, but April 15th, tax day. I say tax day.
All right, Producer Reed.
Next up, Al Gore, before or after June 15th?
Oh, this is easy. After. Look, if he gets in, I think you got to wait. A little bit of Al Gore goes a long way. June 15th is too much Al Gore.
That's right. You do not. You're very right about that. You don't want Al Gore to get in this right after Christmas and ever say, because honestly, we don't want to. Yeah, for his sake.
For his sake, look, he is an October. He is Columbus Day candidate.
He can instantly raise the money. He instantly changes the equation. If Obama,
he doesn't even need money. You know, that was another thing about our panels, by the way, is none of them felt like, you know, money is not the object. You know, money is something that, you know, if you're doing everything else right, it'll come. Yeah, it's funny. It's not
with Howard Dean.
That's right, and I think that's
Jessica Vandenberg brought up that point about the Jim Webb campaign. All right, Producer Reed.
Next up, Barack Obama, in before or after February 1st?
Boy, that is right on the line of what I think it is.
I think he needs to get in before. I'll say he needs to get in because I think the Obama mania is going to really start to wear out sometime in January, especially if he continues these Jay Leno, Dave Letterman, Oprah Winfrey appearances.
I think
people want to know what he's doing
the December
outside
plan,
of the book tour.
But the December plan is right. I mean, I think that this is okay to do it this way. I agree.
But January, I think, starts to be the point where people.
That's right. I think January needs to be his hard policy month. And then, and if he is doing this, and then bang, he gets in, because I actually think he needs the long period of time to vet. You know what I mean? He needs to go through this.
And he needs to prove himself on a more sort of substantial level.
Earlier the better. Earlier the better. Okay.
All right.
Moving to the Republican, Rudy Giuliani, before or after March 1st?
I think he can wait. I think Giuliani can wait later.
Boy,
than
I go
March
back and
1st.
forth on this. I know. Go ahead.
Well, no, I just think he can go. He can wait. He can go beyond March 1st. Money is, as you said, not a problem for him. I don't think that getting in any earlier is going to help him, and I think in the long term, the less people know about him, the conservative primary voters, the better for him.
Here's the thing with Rudy. I get that on one hand. On the other, I think he has so much baggage that he might, it's sort of like, you know what, he needs to go in, have his downfall in the summer, a la John Kerry, and then sort of get it all out of the way.
Right.
Get it done early. So I guess if I were him, if I'm really going to do this, get in before. Yeah. Hurry up, get in, let it all, get the baggage out, let it all, and then renew yourself.
I think he can do that in April, though. I think he can get in April.
Maybe. There's a lot. He needs, you know, the thing that I'm surprised at, he's not attracting top talent. And I think he needs some smarter strategies. So that's why I would get in early to get smarter people on board.
The team.
And I know that's not a Rudy way of doing things, but.
All right, who's next?
And is John McCain in before or after January 5th?
I don't think it even matters for John McCain. It's sort of like Hillary. He is the front runner. He's in. January
and they treat it as if they're in. They don't even pretend he goes. I mean, literally, Mark McKinnon said at our panel, oh, he's 99% in.
Right.
You know, I mean, the 1% is the one last family conversation.
I think he gets in shortly after the holidays. January 5th might actually be exactly when he gets in. If he waits another week or two, no big deal. But
right. I agree. I think the 5th is the date. And
the same thing with the next one?
Next up, Mitt Romney, before or after January 1st?
Probably, I think he ultimately gets in before January 1st.
I think he wants don't you have to wait till he's actually out of office?
Because he wants
when is the oath?
Yeah. He wants the former next to his name.
Yeah. When does Duvall take the oath? And,
probably the second
and it'll
or
be
third.
weird. Let's say he got in before, and then Duvall has his inauguration, so it's a reminder of, oh yeah, by the way, he wasn't that good of a political leader. Yeah. Get that out of the way. I say he waits 2 weeks after Duvall's governor, whatever that is. I'm not sure the inauguration date in Massachusetts, but
I think you're right though.
Whatever that is.
He wants to have that former next to his name. He's the only candidate running for president in 2008 who wants to have, the fact that he's no longer the governor of Massachusetts in front of him. Hey! All right, there's the 2-minute warning. Let's get this show launched sometime today. All right, Chuck. Michael Dukakis recently won an apparently long-running battle with the city of Los Angeles over apron parking. That's when someone's car sticks out of the driveway into the street. Well, at least he won something, right?
How do you think he argued that?
Tank
I mean, can you imagine the way I always like always like this? I mean, I don't know. I was just curious. You don't like my Dukakis impersonation?
No,
man, Michael Dukakis.
Is that your drunk uncle?
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy. No, but Dukakis always had just such a, the bushy eyebrows, Sorry.
Yeah.
The righty blogosphere is buzzing about the bombshell news that Barack Obama's middle name is Hussein. John, does that destroy Obama's audacious hopes of running for the White House?
No, I think once we see those really cute childhood photos of Uday and Hussein and Barack all just playing together in the palaces.
See, I think he is just Hussein. With these prices are Hussein. Sorry. I'm crazy Barack Obama.
Downtown Chicago Charlie.
That's right. And welcome to my insane Hussein sale.
Earlier this week, insane caucus chairman, Tom Tancredo compared your hometown of Miami to a third world country. Chuck, is this going to affect your full-throated support for a Tancredo for President campaign?
Well, a little bit. I guess I have to return that check. But my father, my late God rest his soul. My father would have unfortunately appreciated Tom Tancredo's remark. Reports are circulating that New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman brought down the House with a rendition of Billy Joel's Piano Man at a recent DNC karaoke party. Do you have any idea what Howard Dean sings at an event like that?
I've tried to come up with something funny to say in response. There's just nothing funny about a DNC karaoke party. There's nothing humorous.
Don't you think it was Howard Dean doing Candle in the Wind? And singing Candle in the Wind to Rahm Emanuel.
Steve Rothman, Piano Man, it's all bad. Finally, Chuck, a state representative in Pennsylvania got some exciting news this week when his son was chosen as the next bachelor on ABC. That's so exciting. There are plenty of eligible bachelors in Congress, Chuck. Who's the best candidate to host ABC's next season of the show?
Barbara Mikulski.
Hey,
do a Bachelorette.
Yo.
Come on.
Oh, we're gonna get calls.
No. What's wrong with Bachelorette?
Vows. Oh, Bachelorette.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I think we should make it a Bachelorette. Hey, there's the buzzer, and that does it for another episode of Hotline TV.
Once again, we ended on a down note.
Oh, what's
Catch us on YouTube, or you can download us from iTunes and visit us online at HotlineTV.net. I'm John Mercurio. Have a great weekend, everyone.
And I'm Chuck Todd, ducking from the Mikulski staplers that'll get thrown at TV. We'll see you next week on Hotline TV.